What's up, guys? Welcome to G Whiskey. My name is Jeff. This is a channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions on a specific whiskey, and if you stick around to the end, I'll be giving it a score as well. If that sounds interesting, hit subscribe down below. And with that out of the way, let's jump into our review. Today, we're looking at the Glen Garioch 12-year-old. Stick around. Alright, so this is a review that's been a long time coming. This whiskey has been recommended to me by you guys multiple times at this point. I have tried it. I've tried a few bottles over the years of this one, and it's one that I know has a lot of fans out there. So we're going to be looking at the Glen Garioch 12. Glen Garioch is kind of an interesting distillery. They are owned by Suntory. They are among the oldest distilleries in Scotland, and they're not what I would call a popular distillery, but they do have kind of, I want to say cult following, but I feel like nobody in whiskey says cult following. That's not something we say, but either way, like there's plenty of enthusiasts that like these guys. But it's not a brand that I feel like a lot of people outside of whiskey circles are aware of. You guys, of course, are aware of it. You've been recommending the 12 to me for a while. You've been recommending the 15 cask strength to me for a while. That's one I will get around to eventually if I can find it. But that's neither here nor there. Our 12-year-old here matured in bourbon and sherry barrels, and we don't know much more than that, which is actually not that surprising. As I mentioned, these guys are owned by Suntory or Team Suntory. They're not super well known for being very forthcoming with their production details, although they are better than Diageo. Either way, this 12, it's one, as I mentioned, I've had several times over the years. Honestly, it's not one that I've ever really connected with. I've probably had like 3 or 4 bottles of this stuff, either my bottles or sampled from a friend, and I've always found it to be solid, but it's never been a love. Although, to be fair, the last time I did try Glen Garioch 12, it was like, I don't know, at least 5 years ago. So I figured it was time to revisit it, especially since so many of you guys have been recommending this stuff. And, you know, this happens more often than you think, where you revisit a whiskey that maybe you don't have the fondest memories of, and then you find something new or interesting or special in there. And let's find out if that's happened here. Let's jump into our review. And in the meantime, if you could kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. Alright, so our specs are actually not too bad here. This one comes in at a very healthy 48% ABV, and it's also non-chill filtered, so things are looking pretty good. Unfortunately, this is a colored whiskey. So we have 2 out of 3 checks up there, but you know, it's an entry-level offering, so really, I can't complain. I could complain, but I won't. But I could. Alright, so we have our fake tan color here. As for the bottle presentation, I have a friend who likes these Glen Garioch bottles, but personally, I don't really get it. You know, we have our very basic, flash-free, no-frills craft look to it. I generally do like these squat bottles, but it's just not an aesthetic that I like looking at. It feels very old man. Sorry, old men. But yeah, presentation score here is going to be 1.5 out of 5. It does say it's non-chill filtered on the front. We have mit Farbstoff on the back, so we know it's colored. It tells us what casks they use on the front. So it says bourbon and sherry casks. There's some very basic tasting notes underneath. So in terms of info, not bad actually. I just don't love the look. Alright, I did not add water. Let's try the nose. Caramel, honey. There's some heather in here. There's a maltiness, but it's like a dark malty note, like those malt drinks maybe. Definitely some raisins, some plums, some vanilla in here. We have general sherried red fruits in this. We definitely have some nutmeg, some baking spices. There's a slight herbal quality to this, and what else? It's very sherry forward. Let's try our palate. Okay. Slight bitterness in here. We get baking spices up front. I am getting nutmeg. I'm getting cinnamon. Some salt and pepper in here for sure. Caramel. Praline. There's some nougat here. We also have that herbal note that I mentioned on the nose. That might account for the bitterness I got on the arrival. And, you know, it's more than just herbal. It's almost vegetal. I'm even getting notes like vegetable crackers here. Weird. And now our finish. Still on some bitter herbs and some vegetable crackers. Vegetable crackers. Man, tasting notes. I swear, sometimes I don't know. I'm just sitting here sipping on my veggie crackers. Leave me alone. We've also got some lingering baking spices, we've got some chocolate, and we have some very floral honey in here. Now there is a bit of a lingering metallic note in here, and our finish I would say is medium in length. Alright, so I do get why people like this one. It is not conventional whiskey, and us whiskey nerds, we love our unconventional flavors. And of course they're not all unconventional. We have our, typical sherry notes in here. We have our fruits and our baking spices and our caramels in here. But we also have stuff like vegetable crackers, which, like what? Not only that, we have a very strong herbal element in here. We have a very floral honey in the finish. So we definitely have quite a few interesting and unique flavors in here. So we definitely get the sense that this whiskey has its own character. Another nice thing here is that this whiskey comes in at 48%, which is something that's actually not too common with entry-level whiskeys. You'll find it in plenty of Lafroigs, for example, which is also a Suntory product, but it's not something that happens too often, and it's something that I always appreciate when I have it. But all that being said, this one is not a favorite of mine. I can see why it's a hit with a lot of you out there, but not really my jam. There are a couple things in here that actually don't really work for me. I think a lot of the flavors in here are very interesting, they're unique, and I think that's cool, but I wouldn't say they're flavors that I would seek out. And it's not a profile that I get especially excited about. And beyond that, there's a certain metallic note in the finish that kind of throws me. I do think the sherry in this works fine. I like our baking spices. This whiskey actually has a bit of a bite to it, and I actually don't mind that. But ultimately, it's just not a profile that I get excited about, even though it's interesting. This is one of those whiskeys that when I sip it, I tend to imagine a scenario where it could be better. And for me, what I would do with this whiskey, obviously this is all speculation, it's all just me imagining things, but what I would want to do is maybe leave it in the casks for a couple more years, and maybe we could scrub that sherry influence. Now, we do have a particularly bitter herbal element in here, so instead of using stuff like refill casks, maybe we could favor some first fill bourbon casks and kind of sweeten things up a little bit. So maybe 2 or 3 more years in the cask to round out those rougher edges, add a first fill bourbon influence to sweeten up some of those bitter herbal elements, and I think we might actually be onto something. And it's funny, I recently did a video where I was talking about non-existent 15-year-old whiskeys that I would like to happen. I think this would fit nicely into that category. And I know we do have our cask strength sherried 15-year-old on the market, but the one I'm proposing wouldn't be sherried and it wouldn't need to be cask strength. I just want to see what a non-sherried or unsherried Glen Garioch would be like. I don't think I've ever tried one. Now, I don't know if that would work. Maybe the sherry is added to sort of polish off some of the rougher edges to this whiskey. I don't know, but whatever. I'm tossing it out there. As it stands with this 12-year-old, a little bit rough, a little bit too bitter, and not an especially exciting profile, despite being very unique and interesting. My score is going to be an 83. And remember, we don't always have to agree, and of course, I know you guys already know that, but it's funny, I still have to sort of address that sometimes in the comments. Somebody just pops up and they're like, you're wrong. Your score is wrong. No, it isn't. It's my score. You just like the whiskey more than I do. And that's fine. That's cool. Calm down. Anyway, coming back to this stuff specifically, if you like it, great. I do actually see where you're coming from. This is characterful. We have some really cool flavors in here. It's unique. It's certainly not this boring, generic whiskey. It's just not something that I really connect with. And that's fine. So I think our value is actually pretty good here. If you can get on board with this character, I'll say, yeah, it is going to be worth the money. Not only are we getting a unique whiskey, but we're getting a unique whiskey that comes in at 48% with an age statement that's relatively affordable. So if it sounds like something that would interest you, pull the trigger. It is worth trying. All right, that's it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to help support the channel, please consider becoming a patron. Otherwise, you can like, comment, and subscribe. That is always appreciated. And as usual, I do want to hear from you. Have you tried our Glen Garioch 12 here? What were your thoughts? And finally, down below in the comments, you can let me know what you want to see me review next, and I'll keep it in mind for my upcoming videos. Bye, guys.